Hello everyone, welcome to Working with BIM discussion part 2, Information Management Cycle. In part 1 I introduced you the PAS document, PAS1192-2 2013 document, which is the specification for information management for the delivery phase of construction projects using BIM. Today I'm going to look at another aspect that we find in this document, that is the BIM process in a project life cycle. This is very well explained by using a diagram in this document, which appears in many places, which is the information management cycle. And it is a very good diagram that we can use to comprehensively understand how information management should be done along with the project life cycle. This diagram is copyrighted to Mervyn Richards, even though it appears in PS document. It is already copyrighted to Mervyn Richards. Talking about Mervyn Richards, you may remember his name in Richards wedge that appears in the BIM maturity discussion I had with you. Mervyn Richards has produced number of such diagrams which I found when I was studying about BIM, and they were very good, very informative, and provide complex ideas in a way that we can reasonably well capture to interpret what is given in many other documents, etc. So it's a good work. Salute you, Mervyn Richards. The diagram, however, for you it may look complex when you look at it first time. So what I will do is to take you step by step in important areas so that you can better understand it. We'll have a look. I have covered few areas and kept open some of the things. I want you to focus on this blue area, even as a cycle. That is the information management cycle, and you can understand it may start at some place. So if you had acquired the asset, existing asset, you may start at operation expenditure stage. But if you are going for a new asset, new building, or refurbishing an existing building, you will go with CapEx, capital expenditure start. So I will explain. So for us it is mostly for this phase that we are getting into a project as QSs. So I will start with the capital expenditure start stage. Now the capital expenditure stage starts with the client identifying the need for a new asset. Now this process begins with a need for space or need to relocate. So for various reasons, need for new asset will start, and that process I think most of you are familiar with, because we talk about that process even without talking about BIM, such as in RIBA plan of work. But I want you to understand what I am talking about here in terms of this information management cycle is about the information management cycle. So what is happening in terms of information management in parallel to project life cycle. Here we start the capex stage with the need identification. Now this need identification is about identifying the information requirement. Yeah, information requirement that is there for the project, while we may be also identifying why we need a project, etc. After identifying the needs, we go to procurement. Because we know now what needs are there in terms of information. So once we are quite sure or sure enough of what information is needed, then we can go for procuring the relevant parties who can deliver such needs. Talking about information again. And since we are talking about BIM, so it is about which of the suppliers. When I say suppliers, I would use the word supplier here because it's a word used here, but that does not mean any material or equipment supply. It is about information supplier. So the information supplier can be anybody who is supplying any sort of information, model information primarily. They can be designers, architects, engineers, quantity surveys, etc., or they can be builders who would be providing as-built models, etc. So everybody is identified as suppliers, and the term supplier here refers to anybody who is supplying information, not material, no, or equipment. Oh, it can be somebody who is supplying such things, but whenever they supply information, only they are identified as suppliers. So we identify the needs, then we look for the suppliers, we go for procurement of those suppliers, and then award the contract to the appropriate suppliers that we identify through the process, then mobilize them and get them to generate and share such asset information. So that runs into the start of OPEX, operation expenditure, where we hand over all the information for the operations team, maintenance team, facilities management team, etc. who will continue with such information for the asset management during the operation stage. So you can understand this diagram covers therefore the whole asset life cycle, and given in blue is the information management cycle in that, and we have to see this in parallel with the project life cycle, and the project life cycle is given in green. This project life cycle is according to the BIM task group digital plan of work stages from 0 to 7. Actually you will find 0 here, the strategy stage. That is the stage that you identify the need for going for a new building or refurbishing an existing building, etc. So the basic strategy, you can see briefing is here. Okay, so all these things are happening at that early stage of inception. You have to be clear about it. So this whole process, we see that there is a lot of weightage for information management, setting up proper information management at a very early stage of a project. So the project life cycle goes as strategy, and these things happen, and after mobilization, that is only when we have the key design team members, when they are mobilized, we can start briefing. Then we go with the regular stages: concept stage, definition stage, design, build and commission stage, then hand over and close out. Then I will talk about the asset information that we would be generating. Uh, the asset information will include a graphical model, that is a BIM model that we usually talk about, that may come in some of the software format like Revit, ArchiCAD, Bentley systems, and this model is here identified as graphical model. Uh, in a way, I may not agree for that, because sometimes there can be a digital model without any graphical context. But I think why it is given here is because that is how we are used to see a BIM model. Then the BIM or information management does not limit to this graphical model that we see. That's why non-graphical data is also identified. So my concern may also be covered here as non-graphical data, again BIM data, like a cost plan can exist without a 3D model. So where should it go? And those things are covered in information. So this non-graphical data is again digital data, but not in that 3D model that we usually see. Then we have other documentation also covered here, which is not digital data, but could be operation manuals, other specification that may be in printed formats, and all this documentation is also part of the asset information. And ideally these documentation documents that we find under documentation should be properly referred to in the digital model. That is an expectation in doing proper BIM information management.